Okay, Big 12 number 4. So we're going to put Pac-12 at number 3.
Yeah.
I can make an argument.
Well, you can make an argument that the Big Ten should be here.
That I was about to say, I don't feel too strongly about it to like make it that big of a point, but I do.
Actually, let's put the Big Ten here.
See, I was going to say I could make the argument, which is crazy.
SEC.
I could put the SEC at 3rd.
I feel if Brandon was here, he would put SEC West there.
I could put, because of how good Georgia is, you can't put them at number 3. You just simply can't because of how good, and obviously Tennessee was there. But the reason that I look at the Pac-12 and I'm very torn on it is because the Pac-12 late in November still had the most teams in the college football rankings. Now, I understand that's because of who they were playing each other in their conference. But when you look at USC, Washington, Utah, Oregon, UCLA, all of those teams were still in the mix late into the season. It's hard for me to say that the Pac-12 would be worse than a conference like the SEC, where you knew Georgia's the behemoth, Georgia's Goliath, Georgia's the monster. That's fine. But outside of Georgia, once Hendon Hooker got hurt, it was like, okay, well, now what?
It's also like my eye test is, does that team scare me? If UNC is, obviously it's UNC, everyone has their own team, like get paired up with them in a bowl game, do I go, oh fuck, I did that for Oregon? Like, I don't do that for a lot of Big Ten teams.
Well, we're also talking about how like, oh man, like Clemson had all these great high expectations and so unfair, but then they went 11-2, but they didn't lose a conference game. But then when they played the SEC, they lost. Right. And they didn't play the best team in the SEC. And that team beat Tennessee with a healthy Hendon Hooker too. So I'm still, not to ruin it, but
no, I'm not.
SEC is still my number one conference.
I'm not, and I'm not going to put the SEC there, but I do feel like the argument is to be made. But then you look at, that's where I look at Georgia, Oregon.
The Big Ten's so bad.
But they have two teams. That's the problem. See, this is where the argument starts to get very, into the semantics, because it's like, can you say that the team the conference that has 2 teams in the college football playoff was 3rd in the country? I don't feel like I can. However, when you look at the Big Ten and you look at the Big Ten West and just how absolutely abysmal it is, and you look at the Big Ten East, you have Michigan, Ohio State. Then, of course, and when we talk about the Big Ten, we might as well just go ahead and do that as well. Like, we shit on Penn State all year. I know Brandon and I definitely did. Jack, you stood up for Penn State a lot. I mean, Penn State lost 2 games, and their 2 games they lost are to teams that are playing for a national title, potentially. So outside of Michigan, Ohio State, and Penn State, yes, the Big Ten is not very good. But can you look at a conference that had 2 teams good enough to make it in and say, well, they're not as good as another conference?
I think the bad outweighs the good for this one for me.
I mean, look at this conference.
Oh, it's not good. It's definitely not good.
The entire Big Ten West is not
garbage.
Good.
It's absolute garbage. I mean,
at least Georgia played LSU, beat Alabama that we almost put in the playoff. Like Purdue, Illinois, Iowa, Minnesota, Wisconsin, like Rutgers stinks. Indiana stinks.
They do.
Michigan State stinks. But Maryland only won 7-5. The top of the top is great. I think those are 3 really top 10 talented or top 10 teams. If we had to rank them, obviously Penn State's 11, but they're like a top 10 team in my mind. Outside of that, they have nothing.
Nothing. But their top is so top heavy that it's hard to ignore that in a season where, because all the jokes are, right? Every time we get into it, there's the SEC bias. Well, the college football playoff committee is going to do anything they can to get 2 SEC teams in. Well, now we're seeing a scenario where they could have put 2 SEC teams in. It would have been ridiculous if they did, but they put in Michigan and Ohio State. And regardless of how you feel about Ohio State being there, which I have said, I don't believe that you should be able to lose to your rival in the last weekend of the regular season the way that they did, not play for a conference championship and be rewarded. However, everything else that happened allowed them to be in. I think so. So let's make a decision here. So who are we putting at 3rd? Who are you guys voting? Because it'll be
Big Ten.
I'm doing Big Ten.
Damn, I would have put Pac-12. I could have made the argument with the SC, but you got 2 against 1. So we'll put Big Ten.
I mean, Northwestern's in this conference. Like, they're worse. Like, if Northwestern and Colorado played, like, Northwestern won 1 game, and it was the week 0 in a different country. They scored 104 points this year. Rutgers scored 105 points this year. Rutgers is so bad. It's not talked about enough how bad Rutgers is.
Well, you also hate Rutgers.
It's also like, we're talking about the conference
I
as a
love
whole.
it.
It's like if your team had to play a Big Ten team, roulette, and you pull one team out.
That's the best way to look at it.
It is.
The vast majority of the ones you're picking out is going to be a win.
I see that point of it, and that's where I completely agree with that rationale, and that is a logical argument. I look at it more as when you look at the best teams in the country, and right now we only get to see 4. I can't wait till there's 12 because this argument's going to be completely different. Because once again, the people that don't want to see this happen, it's like, well, who's the better conference? Well, we'll see it play out on the field, folks.
You are right. Like, as you were talking, it clicked in my mind. Like, there's a chance we just ranked the conference the third best conference in the country, and there's going to be a national championship game between the 2 best teams in the conference.
That's why I can't put them there.
It is crazy, but I still think, like, look how bad it is, man.
It's
like,
so
look
bad.
What happened last year.
Well, that was SEC, and then everyone's ranked them first.
No, I'm saying Michigan getting their shit kicked in by Georgia in the semi.
Yes, but there's now
that Georgia team was amazing. Right?
I mean, that's why when I talk about the SEC,
but if Georgia kicks the shit in on
Ohio State,
and then like if Michigan loses to TCU, then we may put them like.
Oh well, so by the way, if that does happen, which I don't think anybody thinks.
No, I'm not saying that's going to happen.
But,
I was just like,
but if it does, you guys should definitely clip this out and be like, "See, we tried to tell you guys." Neither one of them are there. It's hard for me to take 2 teams that could play for a national championship against each other and say that the Big Ten is the worst or is the 3rd best conference in the country. However, you're right. If you pull out a random team, if you pull out Indiana, you might not be scared of them. But I feel like you can make that argument in the SEC right now.
I mean, Kentucky goes undefeated in the Big Ten West.
Well, the Big Ten, I've said this a million times. I'm a broken record. I understand if you're in the Big Ten and you're a fan of the Big Ten West of a school. Like I know Dan with Wisconsin. He's like, I like the divisions.
They're usually good.
Yeah. Right.
And Iowa's usually like.
You have to get rid of divisions in the Big Ten to make it more
even. I said Rutgers scored 105 points overall. I meant in conference. I apologize. That's still pathetic.
It is. Yes. It is.
They gave up 309 too, the most in the conference.
Rutgers is not good.
Or 310 for Indiana.
But don't you agree?
Michigan State 5-7.
Who had a more disappointing year, Michigan State or Oklahoma?
Oklahoma. Michigan State, I think, like if you told everyone they won 8-4 and kind of like fell out of the top 25, they weren't that far off from that either. Like they had some close losses. I've been just like, for whatever reason, I guess the fans are bored. I've been in the mud with like Michigan State fans the past 24 hours. Like it's crazy. Like people are like calling me inbred. It's crazy. Most of the Michigan State fans I have muted. They tweet into like an internal.
You hit a new layer.
Like of nothing. Nobody sees it. Like it's just like they just tweet into a void. Like they yell at me. They call me like an inbred but they just tweet into a void. But there's more people that like they got new forces. Like
Jack, it's the time of year where
burner season.
Burner season. You know, you never know who's behind those burners. I will say that I've noticed that as well. So I had Texas fans today dig up a tweet from Unnecessary Roughness from, I believe it was May, maybe end of April, early May, where we did like a Homer episode. Do you remember when we were supposed to give our most Homer takes? And they dug up a clip that you guys put out where I said, on this date, A&M is going to win the SEC. And they're all like, tweeting it now.
Brandon like forced you out of that.
He definitely forced me out of it. But to your point, fans are bored right now because a lot of these teams aren't playing for shit. Well, it's the holidays.
Michigan State, they're not in a bowl game.
Yeah, like they're bored, so they're looking for things to be mad at right now. So we're gonna. This is the board season.
Oklahoma fans were so mad that we rated Brent Venables an F. They were so mad. People were responding. Unnecessary Roughness Twitter account grade F-. Like just by like the numbers alone, that's not true.
It was that you posted that when I was traveling back from Boston. And I was like, oh boy, I'm about to go get my popcorn and read these responses. I could not have been laughing harder at the fact that they are still trying to argue that they had a decent season because it's the first year with Brent Venables. We've seen first year coaches at Kansas
That was my point for Sunday.
That.
I was like, it's because of Lance. It's because of Sonny Dykes, of Lincoln Riley. The bar for first-year head coaches is moved. If we don't have the transfer portal, 6-6 first-year head coach, fine. You know what? Rebuilding year. Like, look, Brent Pry. Brent Pry is what we expected of a first-year head coach. Now, because of the ones who are overperforming, that's the bar.
I would be interested to hear what those Oklahoma fans, I'm sure that none of them were nice enough or cordial enough to have the conversation.
No, they're like incredibly mean. It's
what
like
would
they can't.
Oh, well, people are just fucking
They
mean on the internet.
can't, but they can't like. I can't say Brent Venables had an F season without being called like all sorts of names. It's like you can be like, I disagree. These are the reasons, and I'd be like, oh yeah, fine. Like I actually don't. But the people that actually do that actually have their name in their profile, actually have their face.
Well, yeah.
It's not the OU Boomer Sooner like a fan account that. Yeah, it's crazy. It's crazy. Like it's the internet dichotomy. I mean, like I don't want to make fun of them too much because like a lot of fans of ours who will listen and have accounts like that. I'm not saying you're mean, but because
no, some of them are mean.
It's just crazy. It's a crazy way to live life. It's just like they're like, look at the two most unathletic guys, like grading Brent Venables. It's like, first of all, we haven't pretended to be athletic. Second of all, Brandon played JUCO basketball.
Duh.
Third, I was JV MVP. Fourth, that has nothing to do with this. You went 6-6 with a really talented roster.
That's my question: is what would they grade him?
I was like, we're holding Oklahoma to higher standards. You're welcome.
Right. What would they grade him then? That's my question. I understand. Like, I know Brandon gave him, what did he say? A straight D. I was like, oh my God.
I bet it's a sibling thing. Like, we're allowed to make fun of them, but you're not.
Oh, absolutely. However, truth serum time. Put your real face in your real name.
They're all having like circle jerks about how it's like, we almost won 8-4 or 7-5 in Lincoln Riley's last year. So like 6-6 this year isn't that bad. It's like
ridiculous.
Like that doesn't happen at Oklahoma.
No, and that's where
the boredom comes in. The chosen one.
Well, they still think that
you were the chosen one.
The chosen one.